in this series, we're growing a Robinhood account from $0 all the way to 1 million. And I'm showing you every step of the way how I get there. On Friday, we closed the account just over $8,000. If you've been following along, we did take some hits on both Grab and Neo. Those are our two largest position stocks, both in stocks and options. On the week, we were up almost $2,400. On the month, we're only up $500. So we're climbing back. Both of those stocks took a really big dip because of all the trade war and tariffs that were happening. But I'm going to give you guys an overview of the account. Then I'm also going to go into the charts, give you a breakdown for the week, some other plays that we're looking at. I'm mostly exposed to Grab and Neo, right? So I have $1,000 in shares on Grab. We're almost at break even. On options, there was a lot of bullish flow that came across the tape on Friday for Grab. So there's starting to see some pickup there. We're up 20% on our option position. And then if we look at Neo, we're a bit heavier on shares, down 10%, but about $1,000 in options, and we're still down 47% overall. But most of these are leaps, right? So we have these long-dated call contracts, and so hopefully over time, those stocks to continue to go up and to the right. And then we're starting to trade into like short-term options as well. I'm just trying to grow this account quickly, get to that $25,000 mark, so then we can start day trading in here without being flagged as a pattern day trader. So that's really important. We got some Amazon calls. We also have TLT calls. And then earlier this week, we were playing Apple calls, some Tesla. So we've been making money there, just trading in and out of options. And of course, I post all of that here in the Discord for free. The link is in the description below if you want to check it out. But let's just hop right into the charts. And I'll also be doing the giveaway release. So I'm going to have that here at the end of this video. We're going to release the winner of the mechanical keyboard. I'm also going to do it live in the Discord. And we'll have more giveaways. So if you don't win this time, don't worry about it, right? So we had this really strong move in the markets. Obviously, Trump is talking to his imaginary friends in China, apparently. But you can see that we've had this like bull flag that formed. This original green candle that you're seeing here, this was when the 90-day pause went into effect. And once we had this really strong sell-off, especially during option expiration week, I knew that there would be a strong bounce as VIX was extremely high for a period of time. It was around 60 and it had nowhere else to go but slowly go down and to the right. And that's what we're seeing now. So VIX is starting to drop. And naturally, when volatility drops, the market floats higher. And we formed this flag that you can see here a lot cleaner on the hourly chart. So these are two parallel lines that you're seeing here. We had two reactions. We rejected there on Wednesday. And then we formed this bull gap. And this is on futures, right? So that gap is still open. And maybe we'll come back down and refill that at some point. But for now, we did break to the upside. We held above resistance. So we flipped this green line into support. And now we have this overhead trend line that we're looking to get over. Now, I do think that we will at some point push over that. And the reason I think that is because relative to the S&P 500, the NASDAQ has already broken out of that same downtrend and is pushing higher, right? So it had this gap up very similar to the S&P 500. It broke over, and now we are starting to push higher. Now, it's possible we could come back down here and retest this, and if that holds as support, then that's a really good entry to go long and start buying the dip on some stocks that you like. So maybe we do go back down there at some point, but I'm going to be looking at that 18,500 level, and I'll also show it to you on QQQ to make a little bit more sense if you're playing that. But same thing with the Russell 2000. These are small caps. You can see it's coming back up to this trend line as well. So NASDAQ's already over. S&P 500 and Russell are still below, but are looking to break over and have that breakout. And since tech is leading, there's a really strong chance that we'll see this happen. And you can see it also had that gap up as well. What's interesting on IWM is that we actually had this long-term downtrend that broke down. So you can see here from COVID lows in March 2020 October lows in 2023. And then we did actually break this trend line, but we snuck back over that line. And now we're pushing higher, but we're still trapped below this recent downtrend. So we'd really like to see us break over this, maybe come back down, retest it, and then see another push higher. So that's really what I'm looking for on indices. Just quickly on SPY, if you're looking to play this, I don't know why some of these trend lines on TradingView, I don't know if that happens to you guys where it just moves your trend lines. But you can see that SPY is starting to fill into this gap that was formed when the tariffs were originally announced. And now that we're starting to chip away into this gap, the idea is that we can actually go up all the way and fill this gap all the way up to around 565. Once you have that gap fill, there'll almost always be a reversal, right? So you'll want to take profit as we start filling into this gap if you're playing calls to the upside. And that goes the same case like if you're an Apple or Tesla. Like when the market finds that level of resistance or that fills this gap, you'll probably want to at least take profit at that moment, depending on the actual expiration date of your contracts. If they're close, you definitely want to take profit. If they're really far out into the future, you could afford to maybe hold some and just wait and then see if we come back down, hold some level of support, and then we want to go back up and fill maybe this other bear gap that is formed all the way back in early March. So that gap still hasn't formed. It's also a low volume node. So that's also an area that we could actually drift up to. It just might take us a little bit of time. We're probably going to have a little bit of a bumpy road as we continue to push through these resistance levels between like 550 all the way to 565. And if you can remember, we were trapped between this 561 to 566 level for a really long period of time. And it was just so annoying be back and forth in that level. So we're definitely going to find at least some resistance there. And then hopefully we can push higher. And then for QQQ, we had like this downtrend. It broke out. It came back down, retested twice. We're filling into the gap, same relative position around this 476, 477 level. That might act as resistance. We might reject there. So I'm still bullish in the market, looking for these gaps to fill. I think even if they do fill, we'll have somewhat of a pullback, but then we can still push higher in the market. And the reason is because volatility is still relatively high. At 24, 25 VIX, we could see this drop down to around 18. Once that happens, I'm probably starting to scale out of a lot of my positions, maybe play the downside because volatility will be cheaper and therefore the contracts will be cheaper. So just trying to stay like as nimble as possible in this market because you never know what headline is coming next. It seems great right now with US and China. Besen actually met with a Chinese counterpart on tariffs last week. So there is some positivity there. They'll probably scale back the really high tariffs in China, and we could still see some more upside. And the market likes to act like a sponge, right? So the only way that you can really force prices lower in the market is by like pressing down on the sponge and water spills out of the sponge, right? When you push down on the sponge, water pushes outwards from it. But when you let go, water starts to absorb back into the sponge. And that's what you're really seeing in the market, right? Is there's a certain amount of money, like a money supply, right? And that's the water. Well, it has to go somewhere, right? Like you can't just destroy money. So when there's a lot of activity and volatility, prices sell off because there's a lot of people trading, going back and forth, right? When I sell, you're buying. When you're buying, I'm selling maybe, right? And so price is just moving, but that money will slowly absorb back into the market and back into asset prices. And that's what we're seeing now, right? Volatility is dropping and price is going higher. It's like the sponge. You put your hand off of it and now water is absorbing back into it. I don't know if that's a good example or not. Let me know if you think of a better one. You can leave it in the comments. But let's take a look at NEO and Grab. And then I'll also get a bit into Tesla, but I'll probably drop a short on that because we just crushed it this week. We actually sold too early on Tesla. We could have made, I think it was a 30 times our money play on Friday, but whatever. Profit's profit, right, guys? We want to keep consistent, make money, and not try to hold too much of a regret when we leave money on the table. But NEO had this big sell-off to $3. Absolutely insane. how much of a sell it. Obviously, it's a Chinese EV manufacturer, so US and China weren't getting along, so a lot of people were dumping China stocks. Same thing with Alibaba, which I actually bought the dip on. Same thing here with NIO. There is still like some concerns about profitability. The CEO is determined. He fired some people. He's constantly talking about profitability. They're doing a lot. I see him all the time in like press conferences. I see him at showcases for new models. The technology looks really awesome. Check out their cars if you haven't looked into it yet. But this is like a darling of really bag holders because the EV bubble popped back in 2021. But nonetheless, like we are starting to push and hold this $4 level, which ironically is also the same key level on Grab. And we're starting to push higher. If we can break back over this red trend line, like we already tested it and we rejected so far, but if we can break over this trend line around like 420 to 425, we are going to reclaim that level, right? And you see as price holds that 426 level, often at times it bounces from that level just looking at recent price action. And that can push all the way back up to this 514 level. And so, you know, you just see it multiple times over and over again at that 420 level. But really what we're looking for it to do is fill this gap that formed. This was back in the middle of March. If we can get back over this gap and push higher, that's going to be a really strong confirmation for a move to $6, even potentially back up to here to $7. And I'll probably like start taking some profit or just like doing a covered strangle strategy where I'm selling covered calls, selling puts, owning shares, buying leaps, pretty much just throwing the kitchen sink at NIO and just trying to lower my cost basis as much as possible. And right, so like that strategy will evolve as price goes higher. I'll start selling more covered calls. I'll start taking profit on my leaps. You know, maybe I won't be selling puts in that scenario because price hasn't come down. Like when it was selling down here, I was actually selling puts against the stock in my other portfolio. So there's just different ways that you can run different strategies with options to negate either downside or capture more premium when the stock is sideways or going up. So taking a look at Grab though, I actually love Grab as a company. I love Uber as well. It's a very similar ride sharing company, right? The reason I really like Grab though is just they have such solid management, but the Southeast Asia market is just exploding, like population growth. There's all this technology. A lot of people are traveling there. There's a lot of tourism. 1 in 2 tourists who travel to like Indonesia and some of these other countries all use Grab. So Grab has a pretty strong market share, a great cash position, over $6 billion in cash. They've been expanding more into like grocery marts and things like that because they do food delivery as well. Their deposits are growing on their digital services for digital financial services. So there's a lot of green shoots of reasons why I like Grab for the long term. It's also building out of this massive base over 3-4 years, right? So like when it came back down into this 340 level with all the volatility, I was just buying leaps, shares, everything I could get my hands on because it's still a good company, right? Like I'm prepared for this to sell like 50% and buy as much as possible because I believe in the long-term vision of the company. And that's why I felt comfortable buying this knife, right? Whereas a lot of people might not have. And now we're starting to see some bullish flow, right? And some hedge funds are starting to pick this up. Ray Dalio has started to nibble on shares. You can see it broke out of this recent downtrend, right? So we had this really strong plunge to the downside. And we're starting to push and break higher. This previous wedge that was formed that it broke down, it's coming back up to retest that level. If we can actually close above this level, there's a strong chance we can push to the upper end of this limit and then even potentially fill this gap. This gap that was formed back in November, that's going to be the key line in the sand for bears who are against the company. If we can actually push over that, right? We shook out a bunch of weak hands from the stock price in this downtrend. If we can push over this level, we're going to have a strong move higher to 680. And because we sold so quickly, when back in Grab's early days when it IPO'd, when we sold so quickly, there's not a lot of volume here, right? So you see all the volumes down here on volume profile. There's not a lot of volume up here. And so price is going to move quickly to these levels, start filling in this gap. We could see a move all the way up to around $10. And that's really where I'm looking to take a lot of my profit. Hopefully this move can happen by the end of this year. Obviously, if they merge with GoTo or some of these other players in Southeast Asia, then we could actually see that move play out. But nevertheless, even if they don't, I just see a lot more growth for this company. And Uber's a big shareholder as well. So this is just all around a great company for the long term. I really like it. It's one of my biggest holdings. And then taking a look at Apple, we do have some Apple calls in our other portfolio. I also post those in the Discord so you can see all my plays across my portfolios, not just the challenge portfolio, but I'm starting to make some decent money here on Apple. We've had this push higher. We're starting to chip back into this gap that was formed from the tariff news. Hopefully we can hit this 213 level. That's going to be the recent high. And then ideally around 213, I'll start to scale out of some profit because I do have May 2nd calls on Apple as well as some Julys, but those are 230 strikes. So I do expect us to continue to try and fill this gap. That could happen all the way up to 223, 224. But you do have these price target levels. I'm looking at 213, 220, and then ultimately 225. I'll probably just take profit at that point. But obviously got to keep our eye on the market as well, depending on how SPY moves and if we start filling these gaps early and where relative Apple is trading at, that's when you might want to take some profit. Tesla, this was a really interesting one. It's a little bit of a mess on the chart, but you can see that we had this uptrend that was broken, and then we formed somewhat of a bear flag, broke that down. This 215 level was this gap that I was talking about previously, and that one has held as support. You can see multiple times it's come down to the lower end of that gap, and it's bounced out of there. We retested it once on the break of that downtrend. We actually got over, then closed back down. And now we're retesting that again, but we're also, you can see here, we're starting to break out of that downtrend, right? This snuck over that level on Friday. We had this wedge that we played calls on, and we ended up leaving some money on the table. We started taking profit around here, and then same thing with the gap fill, and then it just wanted to make that move all the way to 286, which is right at that red trend line. Didn't think it would happen on the day since SPY was like a little iffy, chopping in the early morning, and we just took profit too soon. But nevertheless, still a solid trade. What I would like to see is like at least some sort of consolidation, break over this red trend line. We could buy some more calls. If it comes back down, retests this level, this would be the best entry anywhere on this white line to play calls to the upside. And of course, you can look at these levels again, right? So like this red line is going to be an area of resistance. Same thing with the green line. But really, this move to 299 is looking more and more likely. There's a bunch of bullish flow on Tesla. It already reported its horrible earnings, but people are just forward looking. Elon Musk is coming back, our Lord and Savior. Hopefully we can see a move higher. But if it can retest here, that'd be a great entry to target that $300 level. All right, guys, time for the giveaway. I'm actually live in Discord. Nobody's in here right now, funny enough. But nevertheless, I am going to capture everybody who entered into the giveaway. So we have all the Discord usernames, all the people that entered. This is a randomized wheel of every single person who entered into the giveaway for the keyboard. And now I'm going to hit the button, and one lucky winner is going to win a brand new Keychron keyboard of your choice. And we'll do more giveaways in the future, so don't be sad if you miss out. And here we go. All right, we have our winner. Buttered Sausage. You just won a brand new keyboard. I'll be reaching out to you in Discord. So hope you enjoyed this video. There's a lot to cover here. I'm going to be doing more giveaways in the future. So make sure you guys like, subscribe, comment. I appreciate each and every one of you for watching these and just interacting. It's been honestly a pretty awesome time the last couple months. and hopefully I can continue to push out more content for you guys. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video, guys. Peace.